All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another webinar from DQ&A. This time, we're going to demystify the Google policy maze and show you how to build and maintain a healthy digital advertising ecosystem from a publisher's perspective. With me, I've got my colleague Kelly. And, well, there's not much to say from my side. I'll gladly hand over to her.
Are we still live?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly, and I'll be hosting the webinar today for like Fabian mentioned, demystifying the Google policy maze. Yeah, so let's get started. All right. So this is just a brief overview of the agenda that we'll be going over today.
We can't see the screen. It's not shared.
Okay, let me just share it again. Seems like it turned off at some point.
By the way, if you've got any questions, please throw them into the chat, and we'll gladly answer them after the session.
There we go. Is that all right? Cool.
It's loading. It's working.
Great stuff. All right, so the agenda, I'll just go over a brief introduction of myself. Then we'll go over what policy compliance is, and then we'll be discussing some common policy violations and a few examples of how to avoid them. Then we'll go over the consequences and what we can do to help you afterwards. All right. So the introduction. So my name is Kelly Rousseau. I've been with DQ&A for 4 years, and I'm working in the publisher side as a GMP tech advisor, as a senior tech advisor, specializing in Google Ad Exchange and Google Ad Manager. Essentially what we do is we assist publishers to troubleshoot various issues regarding setup, creative templates, to traffic, booking campaigns, supporting in terms of best practices, optimization of both Ad Manager and Ad Exchange, network setups, from scratch, inventory analysis, and audits to help you get the best out of the GMP stack. And we're doing this in conjunction with Pavel, our Google account manager, who will go over some of his input that he's had in the slide as well. So just to briefly go over what policy compliance is. So policy compliance is not something that is only important for the publisher, but non-compliance to Google's policies has a direct impact on the advertiser as well as the user. So we'll shortly go over Google's perspective on all three, being the advertiser, the publisher, and the user. So there are a number of layers in place to ensure that ads are displayed in brand-safe environments. This is from a Google's perspective. So they have many clear policies around the type of content that publishers can monetize. They have enforcement for advertisers, where they review sites for compliance. And they really have invested a lot of resources into enforcement to make sure that everybody keeps happy. And then lastly, advertisers have advertiser control. So they have policies and reviews that they can use as a number of brand controls to opt into and out of specific content. Then we have Google's perspective. So this is directly from Pavel. So they essentially value all three parts of the ecosystem equally. They want to make sure that publishers get the best out of their inventory, whereas users are getting the best out of their experience on a website, as well as advertisers are not just spending money and not getting exactly what they need. So they really want to invest in making sure that they have a very healthy digital advertising ecosystem. They also have, two balancing forces. So they need to make sure that they are creating policies that make sure that both the users and the advertisers are protected. Whereas also they need to balance helping publishers ensure that they grow, and that they are actually adhering to policies. Obviously, it's a very difficult thing to do, to balance both sides, because each have different expectations. So they really need to make sure that they keep both in mind when applying and creating policy. They also have, like I mentioned earlier, invested a significant amount of people as well as technology into ensuring that this balance is maintained properly. They have many people. They can't mention the exact number of employees that they have, but they do have a very significant policy team within their ecosystem. And the quality team really do have a very diverse set of experiences and aspects that they all look into. They also have a number of different technologies, both manual as well as automated. So the automated systems would then make sure that they adhere to scraping websites, scraping images, all that kind of thing, to make sure that everything is continuously identified and cleaned, and that the ad systems are maintained. So just to go over some of the common policy violations, because policy violations can seem very technical. It can seem very ominous if you look at this big list of things that you're not supposed to do. So it really helps to break it down into little bite-sized pieces. And as we all know, to share the workload really helps with identifying what you should and shouldn't do. So we're going to help sharing the workload with your friend at DQ&A, and really help you navigate through this a lot easier. So one of the most often violated policies is content. Content is probably the majority of a publisher's website, and it can be quite easily violated in terms of these 3 points. So you can either have sexually explicit content, violent content, or shocking content, and we'll go through all of them shortly. So sexual content is content that's generally sexually suggestive, without being explicit. So I'm not referring to, actual, these are things that may be kind of borderline, as it's not always obvious what's sexually explicit. So it would generally be that it's suggestive content without being explicit. So in the picture there, you can see there's a picture of a woman in her bikini, which is fine because it's got context. However, if it's zoomed up into a body part or into a close-up of something, that would be sexually explicit. Generally, the rule is if you wouldn't show it in polite company, to your grandparents or to your young children, then don't display ad exchange ads on the pages with that. And also, consequently, not only explicit things, but ads may not be placed on pages that contain pornography, adult, or mature content as well. And then here we have an image where it is sexually suggestive without being explicit. So this image you can use, for example, if it would be used on one of your article pages, it's implying a sexual act. However, it's not outright nudity. So this is one of the things that would be scanned by the automated policies that I mentioned earlier, and one of the pages would be flagged. Even if a human eye looks at it, it may seem innocent, but it's better to be on the safe side with these kinds of things, and exclude the page rather than to have it become a policy violation. So some examples as well are pages with images, videos, or descriptions that contain, like I mentioned earlier, pornographic images, video or games, and then also includes cartoon or anime, and then obviously nudity as well. Here's another example that the policy specifically refers to, is sheer clothing. So even though this may not seem like she's wearing clothes. However, you can see through the clothes, so it is sheer clothing. So this is one of the things that would then not be acceptable to display ad exchange ads next to them, because at a glance it could seem like she's not wearing anything. Yeah. So then we're moving on to violent content. So that includes bloodshed, fight scenes, and gruesome or freak accidents. Here's an example of a page that would, if it were to have ads next to it, then it would be seen as a policy violation, where a man is tending to his car on the side of the road, but he's unfortunately been killed in a crash. So it's describing, even though there's no pictures, the text and the words would then be picked up as a policy violation, as somebody that has unfortunately died due to an accident. So this could also incorporate natural disasters as well, or conflicts. Here we have an image of a harassment case where somebody's being assaulted. So this would also pertain to that. So the images that contain images or content, sorry, that shows harassment, intimidation by bullies onto an individual or a group of individuals, as well as gruesome imagery, like you can see here. These are also headlines of some examples of articles that would not be seen, would not be allowed, sorry, as to have ad exchange ads on them, as they're inciting hatred, promoting discrimination on the base of race, ethnicity, religion, disability, age, nationality, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or any other characteristic, as well as content that seeks to exploit other people. So again, we're going back to the rule that we show in Sexually Explicit, where if you wouldn't show it to your grandparents or young children, then we would advise not putting ad exchange ads on those pages. Shocking content. Shocking content and violent content do overlap a little bit. A lot of these policy violations will have a little bit of an overlap, so this is the first area. However, shocking content also includes content that is generally likely to scare or upset an individual or is of a sensitive nature as well. So here we have not a picture of violence, however, it is the aftermath of violence. So it is showing somebody the accounts of physical trauma they've suffered due to a violent act. So this would also include things like crime scene or accident photos. For example, if you see a mangled car on the side of the road, that would be shocking because you know that an accident has happened and that is the result of the accident. Here we also have content that promotes cruelty or violence towards animals, so this would not be allowed. So it can also be content that can be interpreted as trading in or selling products that are a result of a threatened or an extinct species as well. So, for example, if you were selling rhino horns, as an example, that would be one of them. Then the second point that we have here is explicit text. So this is generally articles with excessive swearing or extremely strong language. It also includes excessive use of profanity, erotic stories, jokes, or discussions. So they really value diversity and respect for others. So they really want you to avoid putting ads on pages that have this kind of content. And we'll see some examples in the next slide. So here we have the links to the lyrics to a very popular song. Obviously, they swear a lot in the song, and you would not be allowed to have ad exchange ads next to on this page as an example. And then we have the third point, which is valuable inventory. So inventory needs to have some sort of a quality content. If it doesn't have any content in terms of value for both the user and the advertiser, then you would not be allowed to show ad exchange ads. So it's insufficient content that you're really required to have a substantial amount of either text or more textual content than images. So if a site has too little content, or it was maybe an under construction page, error 404 pages, login pages, logout pages, those kinds of things will be flagged by the policy team, and they will become a policy violation. So having significant content on your pages really allows Google to serve well-targeted ads to their users, which is what they want. They want to be able to provide the right content to the right user. Here we have an example of a login page, and they could very easily put 300 by 600 ads on either side of the page. However, they have not done this, as this would be seen as a policy violation. Then we have deceptive layout. So the fourth point and the fifth point do overlap a little bit, like we'd had with violent content and shocking content, because deceptive layout is invalid clicks generally get generated, which is the fifth point that we're going to go over. So essentially what deceptive layout is entailing is very specifically relating to the layout of the pages. So it's where invalid clicks, it's where it's really difficult to distinguish between the ad and the content on the page. So here we have an example of a web page that's very busy. Everything's very compact, very on top of each other, and the 300 by 250 that you can see on the side is, very close to the content of the page. So the ads must really be clearly separated from the content. And they're not allowed to implement ads in a way that will confuse the user or make them think that the ad is part of the content. It's also recommended that a distance of at least 150 pixels is required when placing Google ads near games or flash gaming sites. For example, if you're clicking around, then you could very easily accidentally click slightly to the right or to the left, wherever the ad is, and then you will accidentally click on the ad instead of you actually wanting to play the game. So that's what we mean by deceptive layout. Invalid clicks are closely linked, is because deceptive layout can cause invalid clicks. Here's another example where the drop-down menu is covering the ad. So if you were to want to click on one of these subcategories, and perhaps instead of clicking there, you click there, which is only a few pixels away, you will then be clicking on the ad. And those drop-down menus can also be, weather widgets, map widgets, whatever widgets that drop down from the top bar that overlap an ad in any part of your website. That would be deceptive layout and can cause invalid clicks. So this can also include, like I mentioned, the weather and the maps, also video players, or apps that are too close to the ad. Here we have two examples of, there on the left-hand side, we have an app install ad that is very closely placed to a button that makes you click out for more news. These are specifically related to mobile because you would need to have a mobile point. You'd actually need to engage with that page to see more news. And you can very easily click on the app install ad. And then on the right-hand side, we have a game where you've just, completed your level, and straight after you complete your level, there's an interstitial ad. So that ad can very easily be clicked on there as well. This is one of the ways that you can make sure that is policy compliant, is to place an outer layer on the ad to make sure that you don't click on the ad accidentally. And there's a little bit of you can see on either side, both the top and the bottom, there's a little bit of a space between the ad and the text. So spacing them out a little bit more would make sure that you would decrease invalid clicks and therefore not have a deceptive layout. So we move on to intentional invalid clicks. Invalid clicks, so this is specifically referring to when publishers are actually trying to artificially inflate either their click-through rates or their traffic or their earnings. It's really the publisher's responsibility to ensure that their site is generating valid traffic. So Google really, like I mentioned in some of the earlier slides, they really want to work together with all three of the elements in the ecosystem, being advertisers and users and publishers, to make sure that they have a healthy digital advertising ecosystem. So it's really up to the publisher to make sure that they are generating proper traffic, actual traffic, and not invalid traffic at all. So some of the ways that we can have the invalid traffic is sabotage. So here on the left, we can see a picture of a robot, and he's clicking on the ad over there. And so that is one of the ways that some publishers do, try to artificially inflate their impressions, is to generate bots that are clicking on ads that they shouldn't be. And obviously that will be flagged by the policy team. They will pick it up, as they do have multiple algorithms that help them analyze both human and bot behavior. And they use these algorithms to try and decipher whether this traffic is being generated by a bot. So in other words, if it's, I'm not sure exactly how the algorithms work. However, those things are very, very accurate, as users tend to have a certain way of navigating in the page. And then on the right-hand side, you can see somebody that is clearly clicking on ads that they shouldn't be, as they're trying to inflate their impressions. They're trying to be sneaky about it, and that's really not allowed. So generally, when you have an advert that is displaying on your page that you don't want, perhaps you find that advertiser is conflicting with your business practices or your goals that you want to have, or your business identity, or anything like that, and you want to find out what the landing page is or what the domain is, so that you can block that domain to stop that advertiser from showing. What you can do is to get the clickstring. So in order to get the clickstring, you can do it on either your desktop or on a mobile device. If you're using it on a desktop, you need to find the ad, right-click on the ad, and as you can see in the screenshot on the page, is to copy the link address. So then you will get the entire clickstring, and we would then be able to source the landing page from this clickstring. So you would not be violating policy by clicking on your ad, which is strictly against policy, and also you would then be able to block the ad that you don't want on your page, so that would be a win-win situation. If you are on a mobile device, you would need to find the ad, put your phone on flight mode, click on the ad, because obviously you will have no way of navigating to the landing page because you have no Wi-Fi or mobile data. You would then, as you can see on this the screenshot here, once you click on the ad, it goes to Chrome and it'll open the link, and you can copy the link and submit that as a link that you would like to block. Mislabeling is the sixth point. So this one is essentially where you haven't labeled your ads correctly. If you want to have a label on your ads, the only acceptable ones are advertisements or sponsored links. So it's really important that users aren't misled in terms of encouraging clicks. So things like resources or recommended, like we can see in this example here, this would not be policy compliant. Like I mentioned, it should only read sponsored links or advertisements. Then you can also see here we have the headings such as fast news, which is not correct, because that is an ad on that side. Here we can also see how these ones are headers have been used above each ad to encourage more clicks and to mislead the user, which is not what we want. So it's really up to the publisher to examine their sites and their layout to make sure that their labeling is not deceptive or causes confusion. They're also not allowed, like I mentioned earlier, to click on their own ads and to use through the use of language. So you cannot say, click on this ad here, or continue by clicking on the ad, or click here for a reward, for example. Then we have unnatural attention. So the ones that I mentioned a few seconds ago are also very closely related to this as well. So this is essentially where you're drawing unnatural attention, abnormal attention to an ad by visual cues. As the user is not always interested in the ad, so they may not actually want to click on the ad in any case. Here we can see at the top there, you say it's got two bright green arrows and it says click here, even though the user might not want to. Then on the right hand side, multiple yellow arrows, and also it's saying click here. This would not be policy compliant. So you cannot use flashy animations or the use of emojis to direct the user's eye, or arrow symbols, or any kind of language that is encouraging users to click on the ad. Here we also see, a GIF of a woman saying now. So she's saying like click now, click down here. That would also be drawing the user's eye, and also at the bottom a big red button that says click here. So dynamic content is content where the pages are not set. So it can include live chats, instant messaging, or auto-refreshing comments. So if you had a Facebook widget where you pulled in comments directly from Facebook, those cannot be controlled. They cannot be, they're always different. They're always changing. So that would not be allowed. Here we can see an example of a live chat that has two different ads on it. So it's got both an image ad as well as a text ad. So some other, so it's live chats that I mentioned, auto-refreshing comments, instant messaging, like in the example here, in order to get more traffic. Then we have copyrighted material. So copyrighted material is essentially any content that you haven't generated yourself. If somebody else has generated the content and you want to share it on your website, you're obviously more than welcome to do so, but you need to obtain the correct permissions first. If you copy it directly onto your website, your account will be flagged by the algorithms that we mentioned earlier, and you could have your ad exchange shut down on your website. So this original content is essentially classified as any original creative work that's generated online. So exceptions could be factual material, material entered into a public domain. So any content that's been scraped from another website would be under the assumption that you would be using that to increase the volume of your pages for the long-term strategy. Also, purely scraped content, even from high-quality sources, may not provide any value to the users. So even if it's really high-quality content, if it's not yours, if you haven't generated it, then you will not allowed to be using it. Then we have purchasing impressions. So you're obviously welcome to buy impressions to your website, buy traffic to your website, as long as you do so through the correct channels. So if you want to buy traffic to your website through DV360, you're welcome to do that, as long as you make sure that it is a compliant partner. Publishers are responsible for the traffic to their websites, so you would really need to make sure that the third party is a validated one, and that is actually generating impressions legitimately. It's up to, like I mentioned, it's up to the publisher to make sure that you monitor these things, to make sure that you know there are no anomalies, and that the traffic doesn't spike during unexpected times where you wouldn't normally have traffic, so like holidays or after hours, etc. If that is how your traffic operates and you can justify that, then that's 100% fine. But if you see all of a sudden that there's been 1 million impressions in the minute, you obviously there's going to be something wrong, and you would need to investigate that and report it. So side benefits to using proper utilization of analytics. So you can obviously optimize your website, identify the opportunities, and improve the user experience, which is really what you want to do. You want to make sure that your users have the best experience possible on your website in order to generate a website that is really valuable to people and will keep them coming back. There's no use in having a website that will get one user for a day and then that user will never come back again. You want to make sure that the user is seeing ads that are relevant to them, they've come from a legitimate source, and they are getting quality content. And by doing that, you will optimize the third point, which is to grow revenue. By having users that come back, you will have a massive uptake in your traffic sites on a long-term basis, and you will then have more revenue over the long term. So some of the consequences, essentially, why should publishers care about these kinds of things? So these kinds of things can cause deductions in your revenue. If you have many page level violations, the page level, like I'll show you in a moment, there will be things that have been applied to your pages, and it's really important for these kinds of things to not happen if you want to continue with ad exchange. Otherwise, you may actually have your ad exchange shut down. So here we can see how this is what it would look like in your policy center. So number of pages with enforcement. So you've got 3 pages that have been enforced, that have only had the pages affected. So that example would be maybe an article with any sexually explicit content, or there's maybe also an article there about a vehicle crash, and that would have that ad serving shut down. You can also then have site-wide enforcement, where ad serving has been disabled entirely. So if you continue to have policy violations and you aren't prepared to rectify them and optimize them to make sure that you are policy compliant, you will have your site shut down and disabled from ad exchange. We can also see that depending on the severity of the policy violation, this may happen immediately or with a fair amount of warning. They obviously don't give you an exact time frame. However, they will allow you time to disable it and to rectify it before it has been shut down. So here we will be able to see the deductions. So like I mentioned, if you have certain advertising that has occurred and you have had multiple policy violations due to invalid clicks and page level violations, which are the most common, then you will have deductions. So any traffic that has not been deemed valid will then be removed from your total revenue generated. They can deduct part of or all of your revenue if significant policy violations have occurred, and this can happen for up to 90 days after the offense took place. So for 3 months afterwards, you could potentially see deductions here as well. You can, in the UI, you can also run a report on estimated earnings. This will only be finalized after the 21st day of the following month, but like we mentioned, deductions can still happen after that. And then they will be then applied to the following months. Earnings related to invalid clicks and impressions, like I mentioned, will be deducted. In addition to the deduction of the revenue from advertisers, who default on payments to Google, whose ads were served on your content. In short, if Google doesn't get paid, the publisher doesn't get paid. And your actual revenue may be different from estimated earnings because Google may make the deductions due to these policy violations. So what you guys may want to know is, what can we do to help you? So our ad operations team really works in very close collaboration with the in-market consultants, and they can really assist by explaining best practices, for example, through this webinar that we have today, or through custom-built trainings built around your specific needs. So what we will do is we will take your entire account, take a look at a few of your pages on your website, and see what we can do to make sure we tailor our solution to what would suit you. We will more than likely do an audit on specific pages where we can see, okay, well, maybe that might not be policy compliant. I'd rather change this. Let's see what we can do with that. Those kinds of situations as we would do tailored to your exact needs. We regularly share reports with our publishers to make sure that they are kept up to date with all of the policy violations that that we see, and we can have those resubmitted once they've been rectified to make sure that they are policy compliant once more. We can assist by, once a policy violation has been detected, by removing the tags from the website, and then also structuring a solution that would really help you to prevent this from happening in the future again. There are a number of different ways that we can do this. So we'd really like to take it on a case-by-case basis, where we can ensure that the solution that we're giving you is the best, because each publisher is different. You will each have different websites, different needs, and it's important that we make sure that it's the best solution for you. Like I mentioned earlier on, we have the audits that we can do, and we can then scan the policy violations and look at which pages, sites, or sometimes even apps have been violating policy, why the violation has occurred in most cases, and what we can do to clarify and to comply with policy. If you're unsure of whether you're violating Google's policies, or if you would like to have your account reviewed, then please reach out to your account manager, and we will definitely do everything that we can to assist you. We really do strive to make sure that our publishers are offering the best and most premium inventory to their users. Like I mentioned, the ecosystem is very important for both Google and us, and we work very closely with Google to ensure that you are not only getting the best out of your ad manager account, but also through your entire GMP stack, through DV360, Campaign Manager, all of the different products that we offer. We really want to make sure that you have the best opportunities to make your business reach new highs. So thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate each and every one of you joining, and I really hope to see you guys at the next webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly, for that nice presentation. We have a few questions coming in, and now is the chance to also ask even more questions, if you have any. Let's start off with Liane. Thanks for that. Is it possible to avoid policy violations altogether?
Theoretically, yes, because if you're very familiar with all of the policy violations, then you would be able to avoid them. However, theoretically and in practice, it's not always the same thing. So we would love to be able to say yes, but most of the times it's things that you wouldn't necessarily think that they would be violating policy. So you would look at it and you would say, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't be a policy violation, and it may get flagged. And that's all right. As long as you deal with it, as long as we rectify it and make sure that we're taking the correct steps to prevent it from happening again in the future, then that's fine. Policy violations will almost always occur, but it's how you deal with them that is the most important for us and for Google.
All right, thanks for that. Another question from Gallo. I think it's they're both connected. Just a quick one. Those headlines you showed are reporting on facts, not necessarily inciting that type of violence. Or do you mean we should just avoid anything that alludes to race, violence, or overt sexuality?
When it comes to displaying ad exchange ads on those pages, yes. Obviously, if you're a news publisher or a news broadcaster, you wouldn't want to not report on those facts, which is fine. So we don't want to restrict publishers from having certain inventory on their pages, because if that is what your product offering is, then that's very important to your core business. However, when it comes to ad exchange policy, it's better to just simply exclude that page, because one page generally in your entire product offering or on your entire website wouldn't have that much of an effect on your revenue. So far as policy violations are concerned, it's better to simply just remove that one page and be more policy compliant or to be policy compliant than it would be to challenge on the Google's policies, because at the end of the day, it's about both the user, the advertiser, and the publisher, making sure that everybody's working together to create the safest environment for our brands and our users. I hope that answers your question.
If not, please follow up in the chat. We're happy to help again. Then there's 2 questions from Jeroen. We've got, where can we see this? I think that was connected to one of the slides we showed, but I'm not sure which one it was. Could you please elaborate?
I think it might have been, let me just go back a little bit. So it might have been the deductions or the site level. So this is within the policy section of your account.
That's the one. Yeah. I think that should be it.
Yeah. So this will be available in the policy center in your ad manager account. And the deductions. So we can see this through our multi-client management. Maybe we can, if you want to reach out to us directly, we can walk you through exactly where you'll be able to see this in your account.
All right. Then the second question was, do these policies also apply to own banners that run through the ad manager?
So that would be more of an advertiser's, even though you're displaying the ads. So this would be more from a publisher's perspective. So from inciting those kinds of things on your ads, if you want to display those direct banners, then no, they wouldn't apply, because these policies are specifically relating to Ad Exchange and AdSense products. So Ad Manager is exempt from these.
All right, thank you for this. Are there any other questions? We've got a few thank yous for the excellent webinar and excellent presentation. I also say thank you, Kelly.
Thank you very much. It was a great fun.
Let's wait 1 more minute, and I can say 1 or 2 more things. So, as I said, we will be available after the webinar too. So if you want to reach out, if you've got additional questions, we're always happy to answer them. And we will also upload this webinar. We will record it and upload the webinar to YouTube, so you can follow up on it too and check it again if you've missed something or if you need an additional explanation. We'd be happy to have you on our YouTube channel too. And yes, we are continuing our bi-weekly webinar schedule again after having to skip one 2 weeks ago, but we'll be back on track, and we'll reach out to you as soon as we've got new topics which might interest you. Thank you so much to everyone who listened. Thank you so much, Kelly, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.